With you this morning, and happy to welcome on our next guest, who is not just a guest on this program, but is a host on this station, this network. Erik Erickson, host of the Erik Erickson Show. Incidentally, Erik, Lance told me during the break that I should change my name to Richard Richardson, that it would go along nicely because we would start the day that way, and then we would have Lars Larson at 6 and Erik Erickson at 9. It just flows better. So maybe a name change is on the horizon.
Absolutely. You can always do a stage
good morning
name.
To you. Yeah, appreciate you joining us, and excited to have you on SuperTalk Mississippi. Started a couple of weeks ago. Tell us about the Erik Erickson Show.
Oh gosh, I fell into radio by accident, really. So I'm actually from Jackson, Louisiana. A lot of family in Mississippi. My sister lives in Learned, and my niece is over in Starkville. My mom and dad went to Mississippi College. I wound up going to Mercer University over in Macon, Georgia. Married a woman. As long as my mom's alive, she didn't want to move to Louisiana, so I stayed in Georgia. My mom's not listening right now. And I fell into radio because the local radio show host got arrested in a crack house, and they needed somebody to fill in for him. And I was a lawyer in town doing political hits on CNN at the time, and they asked if I wanted to do radio. So I did it. 2 days, they fired the guy. So I did it for 3 months, no pay, and the CEO of Cox Media Group in Atlanta was driving through Macon on his way to Disney World, heard it, knew Herman Cain was running for president, and offered me Herman Cain's job, thinking I was a radio guy. Rush Limbaugh was actually a friend of mine and lied through his teeth and said I was a radio guy. And so based on Rush's recommendation, I got the job. I had never done radio before. To this day, I don't know how to work a board. I just know how to talk.
Can I offer you a piece of advice? Not that you need it at this point.
Absolutely.
Don't ever learn how to operate a board, how to plug in a cord, how to wrap headphones. You stay as far away from that as you possibly can, so that when your help is needed, you're like, guys, I'm going to break something. I got to stay clear.
So for years, actually, I've got to do this stupid annual, what would you like to learn this year? What can the corporation help you do? And I've always said, I'd love to learn the board. And they're always like, no, that's somebody else's job.
That's a good plan. We need to stay in our lane behind the microphone sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am curious. So you said the host of a local show got arrested in a crack house.
Yeah.
I feel like I need more information there.
So he claimed they were making a rap label. He apparently was very high. I don't actually think he was the one using the crack. It was a lot of weed in the house, and the police got called apparently, and so he was arrested, and they needed somebody to fill in for him on the radio. And they asked me. I had been on TV for about a year. I was at CNN for 3 years, then moved to Fox for 5 years. And they called and said, "You think you can do radio?" I had no idea. Apparently, I could do radio.
So there are significant differences between television and radio. Not that they're not at least cousins, but significant differences. Did you find when you first kind of sat down behind that microphone with no idea what you were doing that this was a platform that was interesting or intriguing or different, or, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever?
It was all of the above, and I can be fat on radio and nobody cares, except now we're all on camera now, which is part of the problem. But here's the thing that kind of blew my mind with radio is that, and I try to explain this to people, and it's the most intimate form of media, because the people who are listening to you have to get all of your emotion and your facial expression from your voice. And when I got to WSB, I mean, it's the largest, most listened to talk station in the nation. I'm the only person they ever hired who had never done radio before. Of course, they didn't know it at the time. But I found early on that if I went to a restaurant and people saw me, they would look at me and think maybe I know that guy. And the moment their back was to me and they heard my voice, they knew who I was. It was the weirdest thing. So I go to restaurants and sit to face the crowd because nobody knows who I am if I face the crowd. But the moment they hear my voice, they know it. And there's this emotional connection to someone on radio that you don't get from anybody on TV. It's very wild.
You talked about your friendship with Rush Limbaugh. What did you learn from him about the radio business? Because he changed everything about this business, but not just in terms of the content or in terms of the fact that he was presenting something different than had ever been presented before, but the way he went about his craft.
So I have a weird background in that I'm from Jackson, Louisiana, which is a very small town just south of Woodville, Mississippi. I went to school at Wilkinson County Christian Academy for a while in Woodville. Grew up in Dubai, moved around the world a lot, moved to Georgia, and I've had this surreal life where through writing and politics and being online was able to meet very cool people. And I met Rush when I was just a writer writing politics at a website called Red State, and he became very quickly a mentor in how I had done it. And I think to some degree, based on our conversations, he kind of appreciated the fact that I was a kid from really nowhere who suddenly was commanding people's attention in Washington. And when he pushed me into radio, and he literally pushed me into radio, I mean, he vetted my contract, he found my agent, he helped me develop my new show that I do nationally, and he was always on call, and he told me very early on that my job, if I wanted to do great in radio, my job was not to save the world. It was not to advocate for conservatism. My job was that there was someone somewhere stuck in a car in an office who was lonely, and my job was to be that person's friend. And if I could be that person's friend and keep them entertained, then I could do everything else I wanted to do. But number one, I had to keep them company. And that was the start of it. And then I remember when I signed my contract, his very first piece of advice, and I'll be polite here and not use the word he used, but I had to have a designated a-hole in his words, although he said more than a-hole, because he said, when you get into radio, everyone's going to tell you you're wonderful till the moment they cancel you. You got to have somebody who can tell you you're screwing up, because no one in radio likes to tell you you're screwing up once you get on radio until they're ready to cancel you because your ratings suck. So I found that guy. And I mean, literally, I could email him, text him at 3:00 in the morning, a few weeks before he died, actually. So my wife and Rush have the same form of lung cancer. My wife's was caught very early. She was given 2 years to live. That was 8 years ago. She's still fine. Rush's was caught when it was too late to do anything. 3 or 4 weeks before he died, I was sitting on my front porch with a friend of mine, having a glass of bourbon, watching some football, and I get this text message from him, and he says, "I need you to know you're a horrible husband." And I said, I mean, text back like, why? Because of his cochlear implant, we rarely ever chatted on the phone. It's like, why am I a horrible husband? And he says, because I'm on the medicine your wife is on, and I have no fingerprints left, and I know she has an old iPhone, so I need to send her a new iPhone because you're a cheapskate. So my wife got this bleeding edge Face ID giant iPhone from Russia. All he wanted to know was one, when he died, I had to keep my wife up with the latest iPhone, and two, would she mind if he sent her a blue one, because that was all he had at the time. So I mean, it was just we had a great friendship. He did that with so many people, not just me.
You have the same brand microphone as him, but it doesn't look the same. You don't have the gold mic yet.
No, I keep thinking I don't want a gold one. I mean, look, I can see yours too, so I am getting a black one today, because this one is starting to get on the fritz a little bit, but I've had it for so long. But yeah, I mean, I got this microphone because he said this is the microphone to get. So whatever he said do, I did. I mean, literally got me my agent. For a long time, I never had an agent in radio because he said, don't get one. And then when my show started growing, he said, you need an agent. Here's the guy to call. So I did. And just whatever he told me to do, I did. And, you know, the sad thing is now I keep looking over my shoulder like I need to ask him a question, and there's nobody there now. It's just I kind of go on my gut based on everything he taught me.
Yeah. The whole agent community, it's like you need one when you're first starting out and you need one when you hit the big time. It's that in-between where you don't.
Yes.
Where it hurts so much.
So, you know,
that percentage away.
I was an entertainment lawyer for a long time and did contracts and stuff, so I always felt like I could navigate it myself, but my life has gotten so complicated now, I've got to out my entire life just so I can think about radio.
Yeah. Can you hang through the break and us actually talk about some of the issues and some of the stuff that's going on in your show right now? Erik Erickson, sure. He is host of the Erik Erickson Show. You can listen to it right here on SuperTalk Mississippi, 9 o'clock weekday nights. We are visiting with him and hopefully introducing you to Eric for the very first time. Don't forget, you can join the conversation on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. Again, 601-879-4395. You can follow Eric. Give me your X account real quick before we go to the break.
Oh, you can follow me everywhere. EW Erickson, EWERICKSON, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere.
And the website is Eric with a K, ERICK, Erickson.com, ErikErickson.com. Pick up the conversation when we come back. This is the Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk Mississippi. Gallo Radio Show, SuperTalk Mississippi. Last night, Joe Biden gave his farewell address. Some might call it a good riddance address. There was a lot that was there last night. You had Joe Biden laying things out about how we should be concerned about an oligarchy in the United States moving forward. You had an impressive take of all the credit for the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal and hostage deal, which apparently is still not fully signed. Erik Erickson is my guest, host of the Erik Erickson Show. You can hear it here on SuperTalk Mississippi, 9 till midnight, 9 to 11 or 9 to midnight. I don't know about the last hour. Yeah, 9 to midnight here on SuperTalk Mississippi. There was a lot there last night, and pretty heavy on the irony and the gaslighting as well.
I got to be honest with you. I didn't even know he was speaking. I had a caller yesterday from Florida on the show who referred to him as a celery stalk, and I'm so upset I never came up with that myself. And I didn't know he was speaking, so I had to go back and watch it later, and I was like, why are they giving airtime to a man who hasn't been president since June of last year to say anything? But it really was the Joe Biden we all know and don't care for, taking credit for everyone else's actions. I mean, to be clear here, had Israel listened to Joe Biden and done what Joe Biden wanted, there would still be war. Joe Biden told them not to take on Hamas. They told him not to take on Hezbollah. He told them not to take on the Iranians. And now he's like, oh, because they're all defeated, we can have peace in the Middle East. Yes, because they ignored you. He's going after the tech oligarchs who covered up the Hunter Biden story to help Joe Biden get elected, did Joe Biden's bidding during COVID, and now they're free of him. One of the notable side aspects of this is the number of political reporters last night who fixated on his call about a tech oligarchy because they themselves hate the tech oligarchy because they had one. And now because of technology, because of social media, we can bypass the reporters who have spent 4 years lying to us about Joe Biden's condition. I'm ready for the man to be gone. And the fact that this was a speech that made as much news as it did, largely because he's been off camera since June of that CNN debate.
There has been a lot of outrage about people with a lot of money supporting Donald Trump, as if George Soros doesn't even exist.
Right. Yeah, I mean, listen, George Soros got, the Presidential Medal of Freedom? There are a lot of billionaires who supported Donald Trump, but way more billionaires supported Joe Biden. Actually, when you look at who got the largest number of small dollar donations, it's Donald Trump. He outpaced Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for the entirety of the year. Small dollar donors, the working class, went with Donald Trump. A third of black voters, 40% of Hispanic voters. He's realigned a coalition of people, and largely the rich, white, woke people who no longer believe in Jesus are the Democratic coalition, which is driving black and Hispanic voters to the GOP. Democrats need to find themselves some religion, but what they found was wokeism, and it turned off everyone. That Joe Biden and the Democrats can't get that. And by the way, doubling down on those positions last night suggests they're going to spend more time in the wilderness than they think.
It was, I guess, coincidental. My wife and I were having a conversation early this morning about, she said, well, I mean, he's not really in power. He's not really calling the shots anymore. And we had a texter that said much the same thing as to what you said, hasn't been president since June. And yet, the things that have happened, regardless of who's calling the shots, they're quick to claim, KJP was in a press conference, this was the Biden presidency that got this deal done. It happened on his watch. There are a few other things that have happened on his watch. I'm not sure that there's any president that in the last month and a half of their presidency has been more destructive to the United States. The pardon of Hunter Biden, this was on Fox News yesterday morning, commuted the sentence of death row prisoners, Medal of Freedom to Hillary Clinton and George Soros, a ban on offshore drilling, Yemeni detainees released from Gitmo, $500 million for military aid in Ukraine, extending deportation relief for 900,000 immigrants, and removing Cuba from the terrorist watch list. All of that since December 1st. It's unbelievable how many things he has done that feel like they are intended to intentionally harm the United States.
Oh, absolutely. I have said repeatedly how many Americans are going to get killed because of Joe Biden's presidency, and I think that number is going to go up after Trump. But of course, the media and the Democrats will blame Donald Trump. If God forbid something happens on January 21st, it's all going to be on Donald Trump, never mind the preconditions for Joe Biden. What we now know, though, from the Wall Street Journal, from the New York Times and others, is that everyone in the Biden administration has had to work because Biden has been unfit for office. And this is a reflection of the embedded progressives. There's a stat that doesn't get talked about enough, and that is that Joe Biden has more people working for him at senior levels than any president in American history who came from the nonprofit and academic sector. None of these people have had to make a payroll. They haven't had to run a business. They're academic elites, the people Americans don't like, and we're seeing their destructiveness at the very end. Thank God we have less than a week left.
Yeah, down to just 4 days remaining in this presidency. Shifting gears to this this peace deal, if that's what we're going to call it, the hostage deal. It's not a hostage exchange because it's not one for one. It's certainly not a hostage release because Israel's being forced to release terrorists back to Hamas. So they said 3 phases in the rollout. Phase 2 strikes me as particularly problematic when Israel forces have to withdraw from the Gaza Strip. Israel, however, has said they will not agree to a complete withdrawal until Hamas's military and political capabilities are eliminated. And Hamas says it won't give over the last hostages until Israel removes all of its troops. How do they make that work?
I don't know that they can. And honestly, I think that Israel, they feel bullied into it. Essentially, the Trump administration, their incoming negotiator, told Israel, we want this deal announced as Trump is coming into office. And to be fair, a lot of the American media, including the New York Times, has noted that they're only getting this deal because Trump, Biden had nothing to do with it, despite Biden taking credit. But I think we're going to be back at war in Israel within days, maybe a week, because Hamas can't be trusted. And we don't actually know how many of those 33, I mean, out of 200 hostages, how many of the 33 are actually still alive? We have no idea. You cannot trust Hamas. They still want the death of Israel. And in fact, I think it's notable, last night, the new head of Hamas sang the praises of October 7th and said they relished the opportunity to do it all over again.
And obviously, I say obviously, I think people know this, that Hamas is just a proxy for Iran. This situation with Iran and kind of the way it's intertwined with Russia and China, I'm not sure we're giving enough credence as to how complicated the global situation is, not only for the incoming president, but for Marco Rubio sliding into this role as Secretary of State, for Tulsi Gabbard, for Pete Hegseth. We are in a really, really complicated time. And as much as a lot of people want to believe that everything is going to change when Donald Trump steps to the podium to be sworn in on January 20th, I'm not sure that any of this is going to happen fast. What do you think the steps are to bring some stability?
So it is complicated, but also it's simple. Whether you want to call it an axis of evil like George Bush did or just an Eastern axis, China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea have decided that they can build a coalition of global powers together to overcome the Western world order led by the United States. So the first thing we have to do is decide we're in the game still. There are a lot of voices who say we need to just retreat from the world stage. If we do, they're going to take over the world stage. So one, decide to lead. The second thing you do is you go back to the Middle East and you make nice with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, or not Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. I'm sorry, that was the terrorist. The ruler of Saudi Arabia. You make nice with Israel. You bring them to the table, which they're willing to do. You reestablish our clout in the Middle East, and you go to Europe and tell the Europeans, wake up. You're dependent on Russia because you shut down your nuclear power plants. You decided to go with wind and solar panels, which don't work where you live. You got to do something else. We've got to actually export a lot more energy to Europe. You do those things, you stabilize the world order. Once you stabilize the world order, then you can respond to China. Because at the end of the day, we know one thing about communist systems: whistleblowers die. So the Chinese have trotted out their biggest, latest aircraft carrier. It promptly caught on fire. They fixed it. It split in half. We know that their nuclear missiles they discovered were filled with water, not kerosene. We know that communist powers have innate weaknesses. The communists have been preying on our weaknesses. It's time for us to prey on theirs. That is simple overall in a complex environment.
There is certainly no shortage of things to talk about here on the Gallo Show or on the Erik Erickson Show, which you can listen to here on SuperTalk Mississippi, 9 o'clock weekday nights. We welcome you, Eric, to the SuperTalk Mississippi family. Thanks for joining us this morning, and look forward to listening in the days and weeks to come.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great to visit with you. Erik Erickson, host of the Erik Erickson Show. You can hear it on SuperTalk Mississippi starting at 9 o'clock weekdays. You probably have already heard it. Got going a couple of weeks ago. Glad to have Erik and his program on SuperTalk Mississippi. Quick time out. We're back with you. Half an hour left on this Thursday morning, the 16th of January.